distinguished panelists and guests, and friends and colleagues. It is my privilege to welcome you today to the inaugural session of the six-part webinar series called Slums Are Solvable. Odisha shows the way. The title that is given to this webinar series is not only a statement of hope, aspiration, a goodwill promise, or a distant possibility. It is a statement of facts, doability, and practicability. It is based on a state-level program by Odisha government being run in the small towns and big cities of the state. With a people-centric, participatory, ground reality dictated, decentralized, and justice-driven approach, supported by well-conceived policies, pragmatic program design, and systematic implementation, the slum problem, which is seen as defying solution all over the world, is being tackled satisfactorily for all the stakeholders, for the slum dwellers themselves, for the city communities, and the city's short-term problem solving and long-term future. This webinar series is bringing the Odisha program to the global audiences as its economic viability, social inclusion, institutional arrangement, long-term city vision, and operational simplicity and doability lend themselves to upscaling and adoption. There is much to learn for other cities and communities in what is being done in the cities and towns of Odisha. And this webinar series is an attempt to share it by those who are doing it. Let me tell you that the first webinar of this six-part series is 137th episode of the webinar series called Rethinking City, that a small civil society organization in half is presenting to general public and experts alike for the past 4 years. The long-lasting series, which has debated multiple issues of urban governance, municipal finance, infrastructure development, poverty, mobility, slums, affordable housing, climate change, and many others, through some 600 urban experts, professionals, and community groups from all over the world, is doing it as part of a strategy to build a wider societal partnership to address the daunting urban challenge that Asia region and India are confronting. The webinar series has maintained throughout its long tenure that dealing with the complex urban challenge is not the task for the government alone, and nothing less than a broad societal partnership that brings in skills, abilities, wisdom, and knowledge resources of people in business, industry, academic community, civil society, and common citizens will do. That a creative partnership between the government and all these potential contributors will create what Mr. Voliandau of Habitat 2 described as revolution in urban problem solving. We know now that nothing less will work. This platform, this inaugural event, shows practically, not only symbolically, the wider societal partnership in action. Please see who do we have on the dais today. The Executive Director of UN Habitat, Madam Anna Claudia Rosbach, working on livable, inclusive, sustainable, and resilient cities. Director of Cities Alliance, Mr. Greg Munro, promising and working on cities without slums. Secretary of the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, Government of India, the world's biggest nation with 1400 million people, Shri K. Srinivas, with an ambitious program called Housing for All. We are unfortunately missing the Secretary, Housing and Urban Development, Government of Odisha, Srimati Usha Padi, who just called to say she's not able to join, but she is leading this initiative of slum upgrading and land titling program in the cities and towns of Odisha. We also have representative of peoples and civil societies organizations from Asia, Africa, and Latin America. ACHR Somsuk Bunyabancha, Slum Dweller International's Beth and Hicks Maria Silvia, who for decades have articulated slum dwellers' rights, given voice to their demands, and played a role in new policies, programs, and institutions emerging. And we also have a representative of the academic community as represented by Alexander Frediani of IIED London. This is the wider societal partnership we are aspiring for. And let me not forget to mention that this entire effort is spearheaded by Human Settlements Network called In Half, ably supported by 3 civil society organizations in Center for Policy Research, Janagraha, and Tata Steel. I must also mention, with much admiration, efforts and contribution of Krishna Sadde of Cities Alliance and Parul Agarwala-ji of UN Habitat Delhi. We couldn't have expected anything more from them. I'm taking time to talk about this assembly of actors at this coming together. This collaboration is of great value and deep significance. It is much needed. It is also contributes to making the problem solvable. We have a large audience here, and let me take the opportunity to tell them little more about the 6-part webinar series, as we want them and many more who are working on the issues of slums, affordable housing, and community organization to find workable solutions, to be there, to participate, to come, to listen to this dialogue. The 6 events are all on Tuesdays and will take place between 4 to 6 India time on 30th September, 7th October, 14th October, 28th October, 11th November, and 18th November. While the first and the last event are on the broader global dimensions of the slum issue, the 4 middle webinars will present the slum program in cities of Odisha in its operational detail. The idea is to share not only what is happening, also how it is happening, and more importantly, why it is working and showing such unprecedented success. The critical matters on the urban slum issue related to land, finance, participation, infrastructure, institutions, law, community organization, data creation, and urban dynamics will all be presented by the people who have planned, managed, and implemented them. And one last thing, far too long we have debated problems of migration, slums, poverty, land, affordable housing, market compulsions, resource crunch, and institutional limitations. In raising our hands and lamenting why reasonable living conditions cannot be provided to the poor and the less income populations. Also, far too long, we have kept a large number of people in poor and often dehumanizing living conditions. That must end now. They and the children deserve better life and healthy living environment. That is their right. Keeping them on the margins of existence, making them live and grow without even basic services and suffer in indignity is not acceptable in this technology-rich and productivity-driven world. It is time to deliver solutions, time to see and show how it could be done. Odisha obviously shows the way, but it should not be the only one. So this is my message in terms of what we are planning to do in the next 6-7 weeks in presenting 6 webinars on what is happening in Odisha. Now, let me quickly tell you what we are doing and how we are conducting business today. We have 8 presentation, maybe one less, 7 presentation today, and we are doing this in 2 parts. The first part has 3 keynote addresses by leaders of the institutions that we have. We have a message, a keynote address from the Executive Director of Your Habitat, Anna Claudia G. We have then a keynote address by Cities Alliance Director, Shri Greg Monroe. We have then Secretary Moha, Government of India, Srivasas, giving us his keynote address. And as I said earlier, the Principal Secretary, Department of Housing and Urban Development, Government of Odisha, just wrote saying she is not able to join because of emergency at home. So we will hear all this in the first part. The second part, the second segment, will be moderated by Dr. Subhagto Dasgupta, who is a senior fellow at Center for Policy Research. And he will engage Suk Bunyabanka of SCHR, Beth Chitkwefi from SDI, and Alexandre Frediani in a panel discussion. And then we also would have Maria Silvia, who is from Hick, Mexico, and who's not able to join because it's a very odd time for her there, 4 o'clock in the morning. We have her message, and that will be shared with you. So with this introduction, I request Secretary Srinivas sir to make his keynote address before sir takes over and makes his presentation. Let me quickly introduce him. He needs no introduction, but let me tell you all about him. K. Srinivasan Sir is currently serving as Secretary in the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, Government of India. Over his 3 decades in public service, he has held senior position at both at the state and the central levels. Appointed as Housing and Urban Affairs Secretary in August 2024, he now leads the ministry's work on urban policy, housing for all, sustainable infrastructure, and city governance reforms. So, with that brief introduction, Srinivas sir is all yours. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you, Kirtiji. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah, very much so.
I'm delighted to be joining this webinar series and to be with all of you and to be uh, joining a distinguished set of panelists, colleagues from India and abroad, representatives of several international agencies, civil society partners. And at the very outset, I must thank both you and Anna Claudia ji and everybody else who yielded to my request to, since I have some other commitment, I wanted to sort of move in earlier. So thank you very much at the very outset. Friends, the theme of today's seminar is not only optimistic, but also aspirational, and it is in a way a call to action. So while we are recognizing that there is a challenge to be surmounted, we also express our optimism that it can be surmounted and it can be done so in a reasonable time frame with the resources at our command. I think, therefore, it is a very, very positive framing of the question at hand. And when we look at this subject, I wanted to share a few thoughts. The first thought that comes to my mind is how staggering the problem is. We know the world over, close to a billion plus population is living in settlements that can be termed as degraded, not adequately provisioned, and therefore the quality of human life that is being supported in those areas is not what we all would collectively as a civilization aspire for. India itself, as many of us are aware, in 2011 census, we have had an acknowledgement of a data point which is close to around 67 billion. So close to 17.4% of our population has been recognized as living in these kind of challenged surroundings. Friends, when I reflect back and I have the unique honor of working with Sri Kirti Shahji over the last, I would say, close to 2.5 decades. I have known his work in Ahmedabad, where I also served. And reflecting back on my own experience, I ask myself the question, why do these informal settlements happen? Why do slums emerge? And it is, as all of us know, I do not have to uh, paraphrase it, but just for setting the context, they happen primarily because people move to cities for livelihoods, because cities do serve as centers of economic activity. Cities serve primarily as engines of economic activity and of economic growth. Therefore, there is a definite demographic trend to be a part of this economic ecosystem. So that is our first point, that we have to make this economic system not only supportive, but inclusive. Now, herein comes in the various challenges that those who are currently a part of the larger fabric of the city environment, are they well provisioned in terms of infrastructure? At the core of infrastructure would be housing. And since we are speaking in the context of a very successful experiment that has happened in Odisha, is the proposition that can housing be solved by addressing the issue of title and tenures? Well, that is definitely one method of doing so. Perhaps there are other methods also. So housing, if one is one of the key elements of the urban provisioning, so also is access to workplaces. So also is access to social infrastructure. So also is access to mobility infrastructure. So also is access to all those elements of an urban ecosystem that goes towards supporting human well-being and health. Friends, at this point, I would also add another dimension. It is very important for us to understand and acknowledge that as cities densify and urbanization is perhaps is a synonym for densification of higher denser population being aggregated agglomerated in a limited geographical area. We also need to evolve behavioral methodologies. How do people interact with each other? How do they get to share common services? How do they acknowledge and respect each other's rights? How do they defend the others' rights? And so on. So, therefore, it is a very complex problem, but it is certainly solvable. Coming back to the original proposition, that this is a challenge that can be solved. Having said that, the second point I also want to mention, as we are witnessing this rapid urbanization, and this audience needs no introduction to the kind of challenges that we face with the rapid urbanization, not only in India, but in the whole of the world. And in a way, perhaps India is leading the so to say charge in urbanization, with almost 40 to 50% of global urbanization happening in India. So the solutions that we find in India could be global solutions, and it could be given back as global public goods. So therefore, we have to all therefore recognize how do how what are the processes that go in to make informal settlements happen, or for for slum like settlements to evolve. One natural process is of the urban expansion that is happening, where more and more rural areas are getting co-opted through administrative or project-oriented inclusion. Now, this is not planned for, but sometimes when it is planned for, it can be very synergistically synthesized. But it usually, our experience is that it happens as an accretion rather than a planned progression. The second is another important element. We tend to sometimes perhaps ignore is the presence of rural type settlements within the city fabric themselves. When we talk of cities of India, we know that there are villages that are a part of this fabric that have not evolved in a like manner like the rest of the other neighborhoods. So we should recognize that traditional village settlements that have been a part of the urban fabric. Now, I can speak of Ahmedabad. We know there are certain villages which are now a part of the expanded city of Ahmedabad, which perhaps need to be addressed slightly differently than the expansion of the urban periphery itself. Similar is the case with these villages in Delhi itself. So that is the second process, where villages within the urban areas also need to be acknowledged as sources and areas where people who are looking for both employment and looking for reasonably priced accommodation tend to gravitate towards. And the third, of course, is the general sort of a unplanned sprawl that tends to happen. Now, this tends to happen because of the expansion of urban infrastructure that is going on, whether it is mobility infrastructure, whether it is water supply, road infrastructure primarily, and so on. So, my friends, I would only like to place for your consideration that we should look at these entire set of settlements as as areas, as habitations that require definite interventions so that the standards of living in these areas are at par with those that are better planned. If this is the proposition, then how do we do so? And we have to address the elephant in the room. How do we ensure an affordable access to housing or habitation itself through various policies, through interventions and approaches? This, in my view, is a big challenge. And unless we we overcome this particular obstacle, we will find it very difficult to make affordable habitation a reality. Now, as I said upfront, Odisha has seen tenure and grant of tenure rights and title as one of the methods of doing so. That means giving the right to ownership in a certain space to a settler in that particular area as a guarantor, as a guarantee for ensuring access there. While this is a very good initiative, certainly can be emulated, we also need to take a pause and ask, is it possible to replicate it elsewhere, considering the asset prices that are currently ballooning all over the world, and especially in India? So if transfer of title, transfer of tenure, transfer of ownership is not the sole solution, then how can access to habitation through other economic means, to other economic instruments, can perhaps be another solution. And it is in this direction that we all have been collectively visualizing. How can we make rental mechanism affordable? How can we ensure that access to habitation happens in a co-shared manner, notwithstanding the asset price, notwithstanding the overall asset values? So how do you make this affordable? And this is a big challenge because we need to understand also that in the urban areas, large large holdings of urban land tends to be held in public hands, while the process of converting some of it into habitable or habitations tend to happen through the private sector enterprise. So where do we look at a kind of a virtuous and a positive relationship or a partnership between the public sector and the private sector in order to ensure that access to habitation through a rental means is affordable? Now, this is a big challenge. And my own hunch, and I do not speak for the government of India when I say this, is that is it possible to take the cost of land out of the play in some manner? If we are able to do so, then perhaps we can evolve economic instruments, we can evolve policies that would make accessible uh, habitations much more real through a holistic partnership between the two. Now, in this context, as you're aware, Government of India has recognized housing for all as one of those large public policy uh, goods and public goods which it wants to deliver in the year 2015. And ever since, through various instrumentalities, whether it is beneficiary-led housing, whether it is the interest subvention scheme, and so on, we have been able to provide a substantial amount of housing, both in the urban area as well as in the rural areas. No doubt, it is not saturated completely. It is the aspiration of Government of India to saturate the requirement. Even after having done so, I would like to leave a thought with all of you because that tends to focus on the ownership dimension. Because the most of the thrust of that policy is on how can we enable a potential owner or an aspiring owner to access habitation through the means of transfer of ownership or through the means of building of the housing stock within his or her own, let us say, plot of land, and so on. So if we were to turn our eyes aside and look at the entire range of floating population who tend to come into the cities temporarily, sometimes on a weekly basis, sometimes on a daily basis, and sometimes on an itinerant basis, because the job seekers today, the young job seekers today are extremely mobile. So therefore, we have to address their needs also to see how can non-ownership based access to reasonably provisioned good quality habitation is available to this segment of our populations and demographics. So these are a few thoughts I wanted to share with all of you through this webinar series. And I really look forward to hearing your thoughts in terms of how can we transact. Have there been good examples of addressing these issues? Are there lessons that we can learn for policy formulation in India? Are there other examples besides Odisha where tenure has succeeded? We know in the city of Ahmedabad some time back, in the colonies such as Sanjay Nagar and other places, the transfer of their right to habitation in terms of ensuring that their right to stay there becomes unassailable, and therefore the right to public provisioning of services became accessible. It led to enormous upgradation of housing stock and thereby the conditions of human conditions of life there. There must be similar examples from all over the country. So can we recognize in how and in what myriad pathways are we as a society and as an urban ecosystem responding to this very important core aspect of our growth and of the need, particularly of our youngsters? It would really inform, it would help us in formulating maybe better policies, much more sharper policies that can be much more effectively deployed. So I wish the webinar all success, Kirtiji, and I thank you and all the colleagues from UN Habitat, the Cities Alliance, all the academicians. And I noticed there is a large gathering here of youngsters who have joined, who perhaps are urban planners, urban practitioners, urban professionals. I wish you all success in this webinar series, and I really look forward to hearing from you ideas on how we can make slums truly non-slum, truly of a high grade so that slums do not exist anymore, so that the definition of informal settlement becomes in a way antiquated and extinct. So thank you very much once again. Good evening to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for being here. I know you told me you were very busy. Also, you told me that you had a conflicting commitment at this point of time, and then you have to leave. But thank you very much for coming and making a very important message. I think what you said is very interesting and important. What you said is this, that of course, what Odisha is saying is a very interesting and I think praiseworthy effort. But you also saying there are other ways of doing this, and we should examine them. And especially in the context of younger population, you said, can we really kind of de-link the ownership and look at the housing for this younger lot of people who are there and who are going to come to the cities. And I think that's an interesting idea. You also talked about rental accommodation, which is also not part of the ownership driven kind of strategies that and also you put this entire thing in the context of urbanization, migration, jobs, and employment, and people's movement to cities, rural villages, and all that. So, thank you very much. Uh, you have a lot to contribute to know while you remain and in charge of the country's housing and urban development effort. And we all know that you will bring in lots of new ideas. And thank you for coming and joining us today. Thank you very much, Srinivas. I know you have to go, and we accept that you won't be here to answer questions. But sir, if it's possible, this is going to last maybe about 110 minutes. And if you could come back in case there are questions, that people may have to ask you. But that is only possible. If it's not possible, let's not worry about this, and we'll find a way of.
I may have to actually leave for another meeting. So maybe what I could
Okay.
request you to do is, if there are any questions, you can perhaps send them to me separately, and I'll be
Okay.
happy to answer them. And I really pray to God that all of our collective efforts should be strengthened, and we should solve this.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And we now move to our next part of the program, and we are going to hear Anna Claudia Rochbach's message to this meeting. Before we hear her contribution and her part of the keynote address, let me briefly introduce Anna ji. Anna Claudia Rochbach is Executive Director of UN Habitat and an economist with over 20 years of experience in housing, informal settlements, and urban policies. Prior to this role at UN Habitat, she was the director for Latin America and the Caribbean at the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy and served as a regional manager for Cities Alliance. Ms. Rochbach has actively contributed to global urban policy discussions and has a strong academic presence in the field. With that brief introduction, can we hear her Chitrakshi?
Excellencies, honorable guests, distinguished delegates, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen. Very good morning, afternoon, evening to all of you. I extend my deepest gratitude to the Habitat Forum India and its partners for convening this important dialogue. I see many familiar names and faces, and I want to thank my friends Kirti and Shubhagato for spreading the message that slums are solvable. Your mission to create socially just, productive, sustainable, and vibrant cities mirrors UN Habitat's own commitment and our new strategic plan, which puts housing at the center of our work for the next 4 years, leaving no one and no place behind. Today, the world faces a global housing crisis, compounded by poverty, inequality, and climate change. Nearly 3 billion people live in inadequate housing and more than 1 billion in informal settlements and slums. We are witnessing the worst housing affordability crisis in more than a decade. But housing is not a commodity. It is a human right. We are not on track to meet SDG 11, particularly Target 1 on adequate housing for all. This should be a wake-up call for the international community. We must prioritize housing, and we cannot leave slum dwellers behind. They must enjoy equal rights, dignity, and full participation in our communities. In India, urban housing is characterized by overcrowding. Nearly half of the slum population lives without access to water and sanitation inside their homes. The situation is similar in other rapidly urbanizing regions of Africa and Asia. The complexity of informality demands more than quick fixes. It demands systemic change. It requires inclusive governance, innovative financing, broad partnerships, people-centered approaches, and long-term engagement. Access to adequate housing is the foundation of sustainable development. It is central to UN Habitat's mandate and essential for building inclusive, equitable, and resilient societies. With the adoption of UN Habitat's Strategic Plan 2026-2029, focused on housing, land, basic services, including the transformation of informal settlements, member states have tasked us with delivering on 3 key impact areas: equitable prosperity for poverty eradication, preparedness and recovery, climate action. We stand ready to support governments with solutions, knowledge, and partnerships that make housing the cornerstone of resilience. To advance the housing work, member states have established the open-ended working group on adequate housing for all, the first United Nations subsidiary body dedicated solely to addressing global housing challenges. Alongside this, we are mobilizing data through the Global Urban Data Coalition and developing the Housing Knowledge Platform. This momentum will continue with the World Cities Report 2026 and the 13th session of the World Urban Forum, where the theme will be Housing the World, Safe and Resilient Cities and Communities. We are working with governments, local and regional partners, and stakeholders from across sectors to advance adequate and sustainable housing. But let us be clear, UN Habitat cannot do this alone. We need strong coalitions and partnerships. The challenges are daunting, but through collective action, we can transform them into opportunities. Housing is more than shelter. It is dignity. It is self-esteem. It is the foundation of a better urban future. Together, we must ensure that everyone, everywhere, has a place to call home. And yes, slums are solvable. Thank you.
Thank you, Ana Claudia ji. I'm very grateful to you for making time and giving this very important message and encouraging the whole process that we are going through. You also made some very interesting observations. You said housing is not a commodity. It's a human right. It's a very important statement. And you also said no one should be left behind when it comes to improving conditions of living and inclusive cities. You also said very interestingly and beautifully that we need not just solutions, we require systemic change if we want this aspirations to be met. And you also at the end subscribe to what we are saying. You said, yes, slums are solvable. So thank you very much for being here and encouraging us and strengthening us. We look forward to working with you for a long time to come. With that, we move to the next speaker, who is going to kind of give us his presentation, and that is Mr. Greg Munro, Director of Cities Alliance. Before Greg takes up and makes his presentation, let me briefly introduce him. Mr. Greg Munro has a background in public health and local government. He has a wide international development experience as a local government official in South Africa and leading programs for organizations including the World Bank and UNAIDS. Mr. Garg in 2021 was appointed Director of Cities Alliance, a global partnership hosted by UNOPS, which seeks to address the challenges of urban poverty, particularly in secondary cities in developing countries. So, Greg Saab is yours.
Good. Thank you very much. So, hello everyone, I'm Greg. I'm based in Brussels. I'm the Director of Cities Alliance. And before I go into the slideshow, I just want to, in Cities Alliance, we make a distinction between slums and informal settlements. And our experience is that informal settlements, if they have the opportunities, they generally slowly formalize over the years. And infrastructure gets better and people upgrade their informal settlements. In comparison to slums, that year on year get worse and worse. And where there are no services, no infrastructure, and life living in those slums gets worse and worse and worse. So in Cities Alliance, we seek to not have slums, but rather to have informal settlements that will slowly over the years be upgraded and life will improve for the citizens. And some of the very key areas that we need to challenge on to ensure that we don't have slums. The first one is around land tenure. It's around land tenure and evictions. Because if you want people to invest in their own homes and to invest in their own upgrading, they need to own their land. And we firmly believe that forced evictions destroy investments in housing and livelihoods and make poor households even poorer. And that forced evictions simply entrench poverty. And that forces people to move to even more precarious sites elsewhere in the city. The second is that we need to include people living in informality in our city services and issues of social protection, protection from climate, especially heat and flooding, and to provide people with the ability to upgrade their own informal settlements as well. We need, at a city level, we need some urban expansion planning and integrated city development strategies, and integrating slums into the social and economic fabric of cities. We believe that every city is based on a foundation of 5 systems: governance, citizenship, environment, economy, and services. So we also know the challenge is enormous. And it's been already said by the previous speakers, the challenge is enormous, and no one, and Cities Alliance certainly can't do this on their own. And every single person in this room today know that they cannot do this on their own. We need to do this together. So if I can, Christina, if you can put up the slide. So we have, and I'm going to just briefly talk about the Informality Task Force, which is accelerating the transformation of slums by 2030. And it's a collaboration effort. And it's built on this primarily on the Global Action Plan. So there have been 2 big action plans in relation to informality and slums, and one was in 1999. And we were created in response to the 1999 report. But in 2022, UN Habitat, the Assembly of the UN Habitat passed the Global Action Plan, which had 2 main issues. One is around adequate housing for all, and the second is accelerating the transformation of slums and informal settlements by 2030. And this has 10 key action areas, this Global Action Plan. And there they are listed on housing and services, land, spatial planning, governance policies, community empowerment, data, finance, and skills. And 3, what we call transversal accelerator areas to get stakeholder collaboration across all of these action areas. And those 3 are coordination of effort and advocacy, sharing knowledge and building capacity of each other. And then the third, which is the most important, is that it results in implementation and action in whether it be through pilots or joint programming or integrated financing, and is the upgrading of informal settlements. Right, so we can skip that to the next one, Christina. So the Informality Task Force was set up, and in fact, the government of South Africa, after the UN Habitat General Assembly, were very keen that Cities Alliance spearheaded the formation of what we call an Informality Task Force. And this is a collection of over 40 partners to support the implementation of the Global Action Plan on the upgrading of slums and informal settlements. And the objective is to coordinate actions, to share knowledge and mobilize resources in a collaborative approach to transformation. We have monthly virtual meetings. They are hosted by Cities Alliance, co-convened by UN Habitat and the Government of South Africa and Habitat for Humanity. And we have a new member. It's more and more groups are actually joining us. If we go to the next slide, our focus countries at the moment. So in Latin America, it's Brazil and Mexico. In Africa, it's South Africa and Kenya. And in Asia, it's India and Bangladesh. And those are our 6 focal countries at the moment. You can skip the next 3 slides there. We've covered them before. So the Informality Task Force at the World Urban Forum, we facilitated a ministerial agreement between India, South Africa, and Brazil to champion the implementation of the Global Action Plan. And in 2025, we facilitated 2 joint working groups with India, South Africa, and Brazil to advance integrated implementation and joint advocacy, whether that be through the next WOOF or through the BRICS Forum. But we see these 3 countries, which are 3 BRICS countries of India, South Africa, and Brazil, as being almost the powerhouse, the government powerhouses behind the Informality Task Force. So my final message then, in relation to this, is we can't do this on our own. We need to join our hands together. This is a voluntary group of the Informality Task Force. We have governments behind us. It aims to support, it's aligned to the UN Habitat agenda for informality upgrading. We have joints, we have monthly virtual meetings of the Informality Task Force. We ask if you would be interested in joining. Please contact us. And Christina Skada, who is managing the slides for me here, is a facilitator for the Informality Task Force. So please send us an email and help support the Global Action Plan so that we can collectively work on the upgrading of informal settlements and slums. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Monroe, for this very interesting and encouraging presentation where you talk about distinction between slums and informal settlements and information that you provided on Informality Task Force and the Global Action Plan and how India is very active and dynamic in the whole process. You also said that it's an open thing and you could join, and that's a very hopeful thing. And I'm sure there'll be many more people who would want to do that. As a matter of fact, in the coming events, we would have Krishna explain this a little more, and we would find ways to kind of get more people to come in. So thank you very much, for this very interesting presentation. So unfortunately, as I said, that the Secretary Urban Housing and Development is not from Odisha, is not able to join, and we will have to kind of skip that part. We will find a way to kind of get her message across if it comes through. But with this, the first part of this particular event gets completed. And now I request Subhagato Dasgupta to take over and conduct the second part, which is a panel discussion between 4 representatives that we have of Asia, Latin America, Africa, and of course from IID. Thank you, and Subhakto is all yours now.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Thank you so much. This was an excellent set of keynotes. Thank you to all the presenters. Thank you, Kirti Bhai, for the brilliant idea of looking at slums in a solvable manner. As we move forward, we are excited that we are joined by some of the best known global experts with lots of experience in the topic. This webinar, of course, is a prelude to another set of 5 webinars on the same topic, where we will deep dive into the Odisha model in itself. But the idea of this panel was essentially to briefly discuss the theoretical developments and the practice as it evolves in different regions of the globe, to better understand the global context within which the Odisha model may have a number of contributions to make. I would initially invite Alexandre Ferdiani from the Institute of Environment and Development, International Institute for Environment and Development, which has spearheaded the work on slums and informality for many decades, has had global leadership in this area for a number of years. And we are so delighted that Alexandre could join us today. Alexandre, we'll put your profile on the chat. Request you to go ahead with your presentation. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, and it's great to be here. I hope you can see my presentation now that I'm screening. Yeah, my name is Alexander Ferdiani. I'm a principal researcher at IID and co-convening the work that IID does on housing justice. And I'd like to share some thoughts here today on different ideas of development and how they have informed the thinking and practice of upgrading. I hope that this presentation can add value to the debates that's yet to come. Of course, this exercise is not supposed to argue that these ideas have impacted homogeneously every practice and thinking of slum upgrading, but there are some tendencies that are helpful to identify different ways through which slum upgrading have been framed, and of course the implication to how it has been done in practice. So I'm sure here many experts in the room and would recognize some of those key moments in development, but this timeline outlines some key stages that we could argue associated to dominant ideas of development. What we can see is that each of these moments, there are some assumptions of what slum upgrading was for and how it was done. So if we start from the modernization era, and I'm going to try to be quick here. This is it's a long story, so I'm going to try to make some shortcuts. Dominant idea that poverty was associated to a culture, a set of behavioral attitudes, and that slums were conditioning these forms of behavior. As a result, reducing poverty meant often eradicating slums and relocating residents in modernized high-rise buildings. These approaches systematically failed. So they failed because they were seen as imposition of value systems, because they never became affordable, because they ended up being located far from job opportunities, disrupting livelihoods and support systems. As a result, people often end up back in informal settlements. Well, in the 1970s, we see the emergence of the idea of growth of equity, an increasing consensus that poverty would be addressed through the provision of basic needs, basic services. The ideas of John Turner and others were extremely influential, as we know, leading World Bank and others to promote approaches such as sites and services, self-help, translated into key slum upgrading programs. Well, unfortunately, this was short-lived, a short-lived period in our timeline, and soon in the 80s, we see the rise of neoliberalism, questioning this role of the state as a provider of services and infrastructure, calling for privatization, in enhancement of competitiveness and productivity of cities. At that time, ideas of tenure regularization through individual titling programs promoted by the work of De Soto, for example, were extremely prominent. And they approached it as a way to unleash the benefits of the market and making it work for the poor. Upgrading as titling became a strategy to include, in inverted commas, informal settlements into the housing market. And it ran side by side with structural adjustment programs and the privatization agenda. As a result, we see, unfortunately, a series of exclusionary forms of inclusion, that in the name of inclusion, we end up excluding marginalized groups, leading often to market-driven forms of displacement, so-called gentrification, as well as increased cost of living. Well, in the early 2000s, we saw a growing consensus that policies have deepened inequalities, these type of initiatives. And we see the rise of new ideas of development and poverty, such as human development, capabilities, the multidimensional understanding of poverty. At the same time, we see also the environmental discourse coming closer to the agenda of slum upgrading through ideas of vulnerabilities and resilience building. This leads to a series of frameworks and initiatives focused on upgrading through the lens of participation in social development, as well as disaster risk reduction, and finally, more recently, the ideas of upgrading as climate action. All these efforts have in common a targeted area-based approach to welfare provision. Slums are in need of targeted interventions so that no one and no place is left behind, in line with the ideas of SDGs. A slogan from the Federation of the Urban Poor in Sierra Leone, for me, sums up well this framing. Don't take people from the slums, but the slums from the people. And so we arrived in the 2020s, a post-pandemic moment, a moment of deep political and social as well as climate emergency, where inequalities and climate change are at the forefront of global debates. Social movements and civil society actors have been calling for centering responses to such crises around the idea of justice, moving away from project-based interventions to systemic and transformative change. So what I want to do now in the next few minutes that I have is to share with you some ideas that, together with colleagues from IIED, we have been trying to put together what this means in terms of the thinking and practice of slum upgrading. So a justice lens to upgrading approaches it as a strategy to address systemic forms of discrimination, promoting reparatory practices. And one key agenda that continues being critical to do this is the agenda of forced evictions. We need to stop forced evictions, as Greg mentioned here in his speech. During the pandemic, we saw very successful efforts of local and national governments suspending evictions. In Brazil, this has also been sustained and institutionalized specifically through the mobilizations of the zero evictions campaigns. We need a global renewed effort to secure tenure. But apart from this, upgrading is also about intervening in the exclusionary and discriminatory dynamics of property, land, and rental markets, protecting especially those groups that have been often exploited and discriminated by dynamics of the housing systems, such as refugees, women, people with disabilities, and etc. Well, the second aspect of what a justice lens to upgrading, what it does, is that it embraces the deepening of democratic practices in ways that support and promote community-led initiatives and other forms of non-speculative housing ownership and management. Well, one key example of that is the Community Land Trust initiative in informal settlements in Puerto Rico, but also CODI and the Bangman program in Thailand, which I'm sure we're going to hear more about it from Samsuk here that can tell us lots of nuances about this initiative. But it is also, apart from community-led processes to upgrading, it is also about democratizing data collection. It is about developing, upgrading, and housing policies democratically, and securing support for technical legal assistance for community initiatives. Well, thirdly, a justice lens to upgrading means approaching it as a strategy to advance more caring, sustainable, and just cities. Upgrading is a means to strengthen the idea of housing and basic services as a vital infrastructure for justice and sustainability. This means, for example, approaching the rehabilitation of occupied or vacant buildings in inner city areas for truly affordable housing as a form of upgrading. At the moment, various upgrading policies and programs are not applicable to those new forms of informality. Well, but it also means the right to adequate, it also means mainstreaming the right to adequate housing upgrading in other programmatic areas like climate, like health, education, and transport. It also means thinking of citywide interventions beyond the boundaries of the informal settlements and putting in place the infrastructure that will have equitable impacts rather than dislocating the burdens to low-income areas. Finally, the justice lens to upgrading broadens the imaginations for just and sustainable futures. It really embraces the idea that one solution won't fit all, that we need to break from the chains of colonial legacies of planning and practice and unlock other options and solutions that meet current and future generations' needs. An example of this is through spatial planning, such as the spatial planning area in Nairobi, which Beth might end up talking to us all about because Slum Dwellers International in Kenya has been critical to advance this initiative to secure tenure in Mukuru informal settlements and create new land use regulations that recognize diverse forms of living while securing access to services and adequate housing. Spatial planning and zoning are also critical to protect the long-term social and ecological functions of land and property. Slum upgrading cannot be a way to include land and housing into existing exclusionary market systems, but rather to protect them as well as other areas in perpetuity from speculative dynamics. So we need bold ambitions here to create non-speculative housing options at scale, and slum upgrading is part of that initiative. So I'm coming to my concluding thoughts now. So just to finish, these are 4 implications of the justice lens to upgrading. It advances non-discriminatory policy and practice. It deepens democracy. It advances upgrading as a strategy to build more caring, sustainable, and just cities. And it is critical to broaden imaginations for a just future. So in terms of upgrading itself, in terms of the practice of upgrading, I see that there's at least 3 implications here. We need informality not to be approached as a state of exception, but actually integral part of the urban system. We need to move away from project-based and best practice approaches to upgrading and engage with transformative systemic change through a portfolio of actions. There is no such a thing that one initiative is going to generate the golden outcome of change. And it requires a city-wide approach, not in form of replication, not by replicating different upgrading initiatives, but by promoting interventions outside the boundaries of informal settlements. In this sense, we need to go beyond this targeted area-based approach, not do it, but actually to complement it with larger infrastructural developments. So I will stop here, and this series of dialogues, I believe, is going to be a critical opportunity to understand really what it means in practice to take this justice-oriented approach to the thinking and practice of Islam upgrading. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Alexandre. That was very enlightening, especially to see the evolution. It brings us back to, and you brought us back to the question about what is the most effective justice-oriented pathway and how different they are in different contexts, and can we document both sides of the story of tenure-led versus coming to tenure through a more indirect way, as has come up in the discussions earlier. We now look forward to hearing from Ms. Samso Bunaya Bachang, who is a global inspiration on this topic. Currently the Secretary General of the Asian Coalition of Housing Rights, but has experimented and shown that models can be developed at scale with close cooperation with governments. I'm very keen to hear from you, ma'am, that more widely, what do you see as some of the emerging challenges also in the changing contexts in Asia, in rapidly growing cities? Over to you, ma'am. I think we'll manage to have 10, 12 minutes to start off with, and then we try and take some questions that might come up. Thank you, Ms. Hamsu. Over to you.
Okay. Can you hear me? Thank you very much.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much for the invitation. This is my first appearance on this very, very important webinar sessions. I'm a great supporter to the webinar of InHalf, yeah, and therefore I have to accept whatever QT invite me to join, yeah. But the topic today is a very, very important issue, is a very important topic. It's a topic of integrity for all the professionals working in this field. And we should not stand seeing slums, I mean, increasing or even existing as they are over and over the years. I think that over the year, well, I've been working for 40 years, more than 40 maybe. Many of the professionals like QT must have been working longer than me. We have experienced senior understanding professional all over the world. So why not finding a more powerful way so that we can solve the slum in a more serious manner? And this is the very right topic at the time that we have the very active ED who are working with so many institutions in the world to solve the problems. And she herself is probably one of the first professional working in the field. Yeah, I'm very much on the subject of slums are solvable, and but the way to solve it in a big way at scale, we need a big thinking, and we always need to have a very positive way of thinking that it's possible to do, but how we should do it, no? Because many of the places, many of the country condition I have seen, or even when our ED running around into different country, different places, and she urged all the key group, all the institution to do more and to solve the problem for the poor, which is very right. Yeah. But how can we do it in a big way from the old institution and old way of thinking? This is very much an issue. You know, we have institutions around the world who've been working for so many years, decades, and professionals are also similar to the very early time when we work on that. So institutions are not changing, systems are not changing. So how could we solve it in a big way, in at scale? So this is one of the key question, challenging question. If we want to solve the slum in a big way, what would be a new form of institutional arrangement as well as financial arrangement to allow multiple action on the ground? Yeah, I think what Odisha has been implementing is one very important direction which come from the state, which means that if the state have a policy, we able to set all the support and components and elements to allow change from the ground through the policy making. But it could be a top-down implementation if we are not allowing the space and the process of working So the government and the people are going together, right? So this is the key point that to solve at scale, no matter how good government are trying to do, we need to look into the people side at the same time, how the scale of the problem are becoming the scale of the solution. Yeah, and this is very much the case. We have to look at how the mechanism would be multiplied, how the resource would be open to all the possible actors who want to go with the solution. I will share with you what we try to do here, mostly from the experience of CODI. CODI is an institution that we build up from all this understanding, trying to find a new kind of institution that should be able to support the people action at scale, right? So this is built for that, for this particular purpose of how to solve the slum in a big way, right? Now, in doing that, the institution that has been set up are trying to create a space and the kind of partnership, the kind of institutional arrangement in which we develop the funding system that allow the people to be the leading actor. Because we are not coming from the government who may understand how to solve the problem from all the key relevant right away. You are operating in an old political situation, in an old institutional arrangement, in the old sort of rules and regulation in the old financial system. But out of this existing circumstances, how we create a new possibility at scale. So this is what CODI is trying to do from the very beginning. So we have created over the time, we able to make this CODI a public institution under the ministry, and we have funding. Of course, we have a lot of story how we able to make the funding arrangement possible to a lot of struggle, a lot of negotiation. So we have the revolving fund allowed $200 million, and this funding is good enough to give a revolving fund loans to any community who are ready to make a change. And we able to get the government fiscal budget for subsidy to make a subsidy possible. I show the slide along. So this is CODI. Well, when I show CODI, I don't want to make a point that this should be totally the way to go, but it to show an example and the attempt how we make a new institution out of the old setting. Yeah, and this institution allow community at scale to be an active actor. Yeah, so you have an institution, you have finance ready, and you allow the people actor to be activated. You know, now you are the solution. Now you have to get up. You got to start the homework. You got to start working. And this public institution passed the resource for all this process of surveying, working together, subsidy for the infrastructure upgrading, and also the loan for housing construction. So with a very, in some way, is a national setting under the ministry, but it allowed the operation now operate all over the country in urban and rural, because the institution doesn't work by itself, but it allowed the new space for the community and the local actor to interact. The city, the community, the professor in the university, civil society can get together and start the upgrading process at a city scale. Yeah. So this is just for an information. I'm a little more a practical person, so I think all the key point that we listen to Alexander and other friends are very, very good. So you should put together the kind of a conceptual thinking and the practice. Yeah. So what is Cody? Okay.
You want to project the slides?
Yeah. Now I'm okay. I'm not very good
and
at
a couple
helping.
of minutes, ma'am.
Yeah, couple of minutes.
Yes.
Just to give a direction that this Cody is to support active demand driven. So community, civil society are the active driver of the process at the citywide scale. Yeah. And then we have the new finance to support the process. And not only housing, but housing is a part of the whole integrated and holistic development approach. So this is the picture showing how we start the citywide, or the gray area are the slum and squatter. So we do not make a highly strict definition as such, but the insecure, informal housing existing location, people make a survey, and they make the survey together between the city, the community, and other actors. So you have a map of the whole city, of the different elements involved, who own the land, what are the conditions, this and that. So you have this city picture, yeah, and from the city picture, in which the people themselves from all the different areas are the key actor doing the survey. So you activate people by involving in the community survey, the rough survey, the detailed survey, the mapping activity. So they all wake up and they are part of this active process at the city scale approach. And then we send the architect. They could come from university, they could come from other, to start planning with the community about the alternative plan, either to use the plan for negotiation, or you negotiate the land, and then after that you do the planning together. So planning, participatory planning, as a way to let the people think how they're going to make a new housing project of the future, and put all the element into the planning process. Yeah. And then the saving, because housing is a big investment, so they have to set up the community fund where everybody is a part of, and the growing fund is a growing strength, growing financial capacity of the collective group of people, as well as each individual at the same time. And then come the planning. In this process approach, you can come up with different kinds of plan: existing, reblocking, reconstruction, land sharing, or construct into flat, like this one. You could see from the former slum reconstruction, this is former existing area, you change it into something like that, with the whole system owned by community, and community are the key actor involved in construction process and all the following development. You could see like this is a very big canal improvement program all over Bangkok. Three canal about. This is a former community, and this is the after reconstruction. You divide into different sections, where each section have the community who get together and have a cooperative, working with the architect and the local authority and the different key organization to work block by block, like that. Or you have the redevelopment project, where you change the slum, allow the area supposed to be redeveloped into a different housing arrangement, all owned by community organization, with the strong participation of the city authority, the professor, the university, and the civil society. The form could go up as the high rise, You have the city where you develop all the former slum area. We call it citywide upgrading. Yeah. Different kinds of housing arrangement could be there. And I could say that this is a much cheaper housing development project, because when people work together, they will try to find a way in which they can reduce the price as much as possible. And not only housing, you can also see a lot of social development of the different group, which mean that, and I want to address this, that housing development is not just physical houses, a kind of project that most of the housing professional meaning, which is making house and get somebody to stay there, is the system of living. We get the number of people to live together. So we need an interactive system. We need a more collective system, social, physical, welfare, economic, environmental, whatever. And all these issues in which we professionals sometimes try to see how to make it better, we forget the people who are supposed to be an army or the key actor to make all those different issues to be a part of the overall community change. So housing would bring us the system of people to live and to take care of every issue, poverty, social, economic, and etc., etc. And they're growing with that. Each of the issue, when they work, there will be a new relationship between the community people and the city. And in our case, we develop the linkages among the community into a community network and collaborative committee with the local authority. So by moving the slum, changing the slum, you are changing the system of people and changing the relationship between the poor and all the upper layer at the same time. And by being a group, it's sort of building a big strong force for all relevant development of the people, and by their growth, they become a new acceptable citizen with a protection, social protection in the community and in relation to the external force. So this is what I'm trying to say. And in this way of approach, if we understand it very well, it's not one given city, but you can promote this change at the national scale. So if the system are not working and still clumsy and too much regulation, the people on the ground are the answer, and they can make a move. And by making a proactive move, constructive move, start doing things and so on, and linking together, you can acquire land, you can negotiate, and you can linking with the different authority. The move can come from the people at the same time. And with that stronger force from the people, we could make a more just, a more collaborative city development direction. And I can tell you that this could happen in any city in the world. Just have a clearer understanding. The force of change should come from the people, but do it in a proactive way. But to do so, how we would make an institution ready to support such a change. Yeah. So this is my very brief presentation, Kirti. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ma'am, every time we hear of Cody and hear you present, it's an inspiration. Thank you so much. And there's so much to learn about the details of it. I think we should request Kirti Bhai to also have another deep dive into Cody at some stage and ask similar questions as we're planning to do about Odisha. In Odisha, of course, in one sense, it's quite public sector driven. So it'll be good to learn about shortcomings on both sides too. Thank you so much, Ma'am Samso. I think we should move on to Madam Beth. Chetak Kave Biti, who's at the Secretariat of the Slum Development International SDI. It's such a pleasure to have you here, ma'am. We are looking forward to learn lessons from your work. Over to you, ma'am. We'll be posting your profile on the chat. Over to you.
Thank you very much and good afternoon, everyone. When I saw the title of this webinar, I wanted to be the contrarian and argue against the word solvable. I'm arguing against the word solvable because it frames slums as problems rather than as solutions. And this perspective then overlooks the complexities that lead to their existence. So if we understand slums as an outcome of systemic failures, then I think we are offered more solutions in terms of how to address them. It's always difficult to make a presentation after Sun Suk and the rich experience that Cody has offered for all of us who are in this sector. But just briefly, SDI is a network of community organizations who are networked across cities and countries in Asia, Latin America, and Africa. I will limit my intervention to Africa, as we have a lot of inputs from Asia. One of the biggest challenges, and if I look at SDI's experiences over the last 30 years, has been exactly the point Sun Suk was making around communities coming together initially. Let's just demonstrate what we are capable of, and then we will convince government that this is a solution that works. But unless that government and the institutions that make government are themselves transformed, then what then results is a series of very good examples, very good case studies, but nothing that is systematically shifting. And where scale has been achieved within the SDI network, this has come about because either, as in the case of Cody, you have had to completely develop a new institutional framework that addresses slums, that is supported and linked to government, that is resourced with resources, both financial and human resources, but also resourced from the part of the communities themselves in terms of their capacity and capabilities to collect data, to network, to put their sweat equity where and when a project comes into place. So like Cody and the federations that work within Thailand, SDI affiliates organize at the community level in serving collectives with women leaders at the forefront. And this becomes the component through which the settlement is then organized. And the space to develop their own agency and capabilities in addressing a myriad of very everyday issues. So giving out small loans gives the social movement capabilities and energy to then approach government from a positions of power rather than as suppliants. So My colleague from IIED showed an example of the Mukuru SPA, which Muungano wa Wanavijiji and SDI Kenya, our affiliates in Nairobi, worked on. This was based off starting from women organizing and then building a collective around data collection, linking with legal processes to actually get a statutory instrument through which planning and upgrading of that particular settlement could then be organized. So that those processes are absolutely critical. So ultimately, the SPA has become a new institutional framework that looks and identifies that you can't use the existing planning laws or the existing institutions to plan where you have that the level of large scale informal settlements or slum conditions. And another example, so in Kenya, they are now trying to, I use the word replicate with caution because every settlement is different. So there is a typology or a mechanism that has been developed. How can you use what you have learned to redo it in another settlement, taking into account that each and every one of those settlements is their own contextual issues. So they are looking at how they move and scale up that process. In Namibia, for over when was the first Habitat conference? 86. The women in Windhoek, who were mostly domestic workers, started to mobilize, still on small saving loans. And over the years, they've grown a network across all of the urban, both large and small urban areas across Namibia. And through that, they set up their own fund initially, that they were putting their own resources and whatever the NGO that supports them could fundraise. To a point where they then got into negotiations with the states, where they started receiving an annual allocation from the fiscus to put into that fund for housing construction. They still have mostly control of that fund and they manage it on their own, but there is an annual allocation from government that is now considered and agreed is necessary on an annual basis. This year, they received the largest amount they've received for over the last 10 or so years that government has been making these allocations for 30 million rands, which is an equivalent of about 1.7 million USD. So in some ways, that institution of financing housing construction in informal settlements is building itself through what the Namibia slum dwellers have developed and over the years. So for me, I think the critical issue is understanding first and foremost that slums are actually opportunities to redefine the institutions that are necessary for us to end up with justice and housing within our cities, and that shift in mindset is absolutely necessary if we are to address this challenge, opportunity at scale. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Beth. That was also an amazing perspective. I see a lot of your colleagues have joined the webinar too. I would really request you to also join the following 4, because it will create a little dynamic of what happens when the government takes the lead, and what kind of gaps it does create. It'll be lovely to discuss and hear from you once you are more exposed to the work in Odisha, which to one extent was a government trying to be very supportive. But we still have to see the outcomes, and a critique on that will be super helpful. Thank you so much. We'll now move on to a message by Maria Silva Emanuele. She's leads the Habitat International Coalition's work in Latin America. We have a recorded message, given that it is very early in the day for her. I request Chitrakshi to kind of, if she can play through that, that will give us another perspective of how communities in Latin America are approaching the issue. Chitrakshi?
Is there a problem? Chitrakshi?
If not, I can play it, sir. Not an issue. Just a second.
There's a bit of an issue at Chitrakshi's end. I'm not very sure. I might be able to play it. Let me give it a try. Oh, thank you. The sound is not coming through.
Sound.
Just a moment.
Saga Chitrakshi, sound is not coming through.
I have the video as well. I can try as well.
Christina, you have it? Can you put it on? Yeah.
The sound is not coming through.
So
Sound
can
is not coming.
Sir, can I play?
Yes, Chitrakshi.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for this invitation. I really appreciate the opportunity with you for a small moment with this recording.
Chitrakshi, there's a problem. We're not able to understand this.
Thinking about the subsequent reactivation of activity, life, economy. In this context, a group of 60 organizations moment. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for this invitation. I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you, even just for a small moment with this pre-recording. We wish to share with you from the Latin American Office of the international coalition experience that we have about the subsequent reactivation of activity, lives, economy. In this context, a group of 60 organizations came together in the region to development as the campaign, Our Neighborhood, Our Rights, Our Cities. The content of the material produced was developed through national and regional workshops during 2 years, the last 2 years of the pandemic. So we really try to take all propositions from the ground and try really to build a common understanding documents and even examples all together in this regional document. Those of us who participated in the campaign believe that we need to recognize that the fundamental parameter of urban development must be the collective interest and the prioritization and marginalized group. Furthermore, in order to really accelerate the post-COVID recovery, we argued at the time that it was necessary really to promote neighborhood improvement and social urban integration, which should be financed, at least in part, with taxes on large properties and capital gain. To this end, in the text that we built together, we broke down 10 demands and measures to address the main problems affecting popular neighborhood and advance medium and long-term transformation to complying with state international human rights obligation and also with the commitments made by states through the Sustainable Development Goals, especially goals number 11. In the document, we identify a series of more than 100 regulation, public policies, and social initiatives that for us can serve as an example to address each of every identified problem. The approach used considers the interdependence and indivisibility of all human rights, the gender and generational perspective, as well as the intersectionality. The right to the adequate housing with its 7 components is the starting points for sure, as is the right that bind all states in the region and establish that its fulfillment goes beyond the object of housing and cannot be understood in isolation without the fulfillment of other rights, as we all know. This is the case of the right to land, recently recognized by the UN Economic, Social and Cultural Rights Committee in its general comment number 26, the right to water, sanitation, health, environment, as well as the right to the city, that, as we know, is also being recognized at the new urban agenda level. This collective rights is the guide for advancing the democratic management of the territory, recognizing its social function and materializing the comprehensiveness of all rights already recognized and others that arise from popular demands. The text that we built also draws on various analyses, reports, and previous initiatives on the topic. It suggests working on the construction of a comprehensive, sustained and multi-sector policies designed and implemented with the direct and effective participation of residents and various institutions, overcoming the reductionist approach that have been many of the region neighborhood improvement process, for example, by separating improvement from legalization. This is like this because considering that we understand neighborhood improvement not as an isolated one-off program, but as cross-cutting really strategy to reduce and address inequality and advance social spatial justice through concerted territorial action tailored to each situation. The document highlights that manipulation. So in the document, you will find 10, as I said, collective demands, the diagnosis around each problem that the demands are trying really to solve, and many examples that we already know in the region that needs really to be connecting between them, really to change things. The 10 demands are the right to land and adequate housing. Number 2, security of tenure. Number 3, infrastructure, services and facilities. Number 4, habitability and environmental condition. Number 5, social and solidarity economy. Number 6, care and mutual aid networks. Number 7, the problems about violence, the different violence we have in the region. 8, criminalization, institutional discrimination, organized crime, drug trafficking, internal conflict and state violence. Number 9, co-creation and self-management. Number 10, visibility of neighborhood and participatory action. I will present the document in a really big event, a regional event with different network, with the Lincoln Institute, also with different authorities, really high-level authorities from different countries. I think was a really interesting experience. We still advocate for the proposition that and the demand.
Thank you, Chitrakshi. That was Maria Silva from HIC Latin America. Given we are running out of time, just as a brief summary, she was talking about the COVID scenario, how it damaged life opportunities in slum settlements, and how a network has been created, which now has a whole set of common demands that they take to various governments across, and how communities have been supporting each other. Means at this stage, before I hand over to Kirtibhai, I just wanted to make a plug for the next part of the series. Before that, also, thanks so much for the detailed comments, inquiries, questions, clarification, questions that we got. We'll try and answer them as we take the sessions forward and incorporate them in our planning for the future, for the next 5 seminars in this series. Thanks for such an engaged discussion from the participants. Just as a plug, the next workshop is on the 7th of October, which will give the overall socioeconomic circumstances under which the Odisha model kind of developed. It will give a more broad brush picture, but will be focused on the Odisha model. Please do attend that. That gives us a very that is aimed to give the participants an overview of the context in which Odisha managed to do what it did. The following workshop will be on slumland titling, and will deep dive into it, the role of communities, the changes in law, the Land Guarantee Act, all of that, which is on the 11th. No, which is on the 14th of October. Apologies. Then on the 28th of October, we will look at slum upgrading in more detail. what the protocols were, how the lands were defined for upgrading, the sequencing of all of that. And then on the 11th of November, we will go into looking at added issues of community, the roles that community played through a public program, how they were brought central to the public program. And finally, we will have one on the 18th of November, in which we will discuss what the implications and what kind of lessons we have learned from this exercise, what are the pitfalls, and what we need to keep in mind as new programs develop and for the future work in Odisha too. Thank you so much. A word of thanks to all the keynote speakers for setting the stage for this series. The panelists today for their insightful presentations and talk on the context of in the global context, how this might how this engages with the global context, to the collaborating institutions, INHAF, Cities Alliance, UN Habitat, Tata Steel Foundation, Janagra, and my organization, the Center for Policy Research. Over to you, Kirti Bhai, for a last word before we close today's session.
Thank you very much. It's getting late, and I think I just wanted to kind of touch upon a very few things very quickly. One is, Beth, are you there? Let me kind of tell you this.
Yes, I am.
I'm very glad that you brought this out, I think, but let me tell you this, that I was 26 when I said slum is a solution. And I'm 83 when we talk about slums are solvable. The 60 long years that have gone in between in my own personal growth and the growth of the whole issue, maybe we should find some time to talk about this. Believe me, it's exceedingly important. That's number one. Number two is this. It's very deliberate, very thought over title. It's not just something that we threw in. And the reason is this. We are talking about this program in 4 webinars in Odisha. That program is run by government. It's a government program. It's a public sector thing. Second thing, while we talk about citywide upgrading, this is statewide upgrading. It has included all towns and cities, big and small. It has created legislation in support of the whole process so that the process doesn't get derailed. It has dealt with the land issue very creatively. It has looked at the whole issue of resources in terms of getting it from the system very creatively. And therefore, what I'm trying to say is this, that this is a very, very special program. And we must look at it very critically. But it's very important where it comes from, what all it has done. And that is why we thought, let us talk about this not only as a problem, but that slums are a solution. Because everyone says it's not solvable. Everyone says it's very difficult. We give excuses for a very long time why it cannot be done. And here it's happening at a state level. So I thought it was very important. Not only this, if we had time, and I hope this particular webinar series motivates us enough to talk about yet another huge experiment that is going on in India. Country is dealing with Asia's largest slum called Dharavi. It is talking about more than 500,000 people. And the entire program is done by a private sector operator, real estate people. And I'm personally very keen to understand how it works. because, for a long time, we have talked about civil society and NGOs working on it. We, of course, talked about government's policies and program. And here is a big role player in the context of private sector. It will be very interesting to see how it goes, how it works, what does it deliver, and what kind of problems it creates. So that's the second part that I wanted to mention. The third part that I wanted to mention is we want this particular series to be very dynamic. That is why we have really stretched this for about 2.5 months, starting 30th September, ending 18th November. And the reason we are doing it is this, that we want this particular process, this particular engagement to talk, to discuss, to bring in more people, more ideas. And therefore, I'm essentially requesting you all who are here and all that you get it, please come back with your ideas, come back with your suggestions. We will make changes. Nothing is frozen. We are all trying to kind of work, and we're very keen to listen. As a matter of fact, I felt very sorry when Shubhakto had to say to Somsuk that there is not enough time. I have heard Somsuk for 30 years, and I'm still not satisfied in terms of what she has to say. And we're trying to kind of compress that in few minutes. This is a long process. This has been very important human issue that we are dealing with. There are a number of people who are invested in it, found solutions, found approaches, and found ways of doing things. We want to bring as much as possible in this particular process, and therefore, please contribute, please join, please tell us how not to do. And we will listen to you very, very carefully. And last thing that I must do is to thank everyone who is here. I must thank Anna Claudia Rosberg, Mr. Greg Munro, Sri K. Shrikant Srinivas, sir, Secretary, Government of India. Alexandra, beautiful presentation. I want to learn a lot from him. Somsuk, Beth, Maria, Subhagato, Krishna, Parulji, Chitrakshi, Sagar, and of course, all who have helped us from our other partners, Janagraha, and I think, Center for Policy Research, and of course, Tata Steel. So thank you very much. We look forward to meeting you again on 7th. Please join us, and please tell us what to do better, how to do better. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah.
Thank you, Somsuk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And how is your health, Samsuk? Krishna, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. This was a very good session. Thanks a lot.
Lovely. Thank you. I think it's very good beginning. And I think, we just had one little casualty, but otherwise everyone was there and it's worked very well. Thank you, Krishna.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Talk to you soon.
Bye. Thank you, Sagar.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Please stop the recording and send me the link afterwards so we can put it into our webpage as well.
Krishna, can you stop recording? Sorry.
Please do stop recording. Then we can also close the meeting. Thanks a lot, and we talk next time.
Krishna, did you say that you're not there on the 7th? Did you say that?
I didn't say anything like this.
No, I'm not talking about now, earlier.
No, I shall be there. Let me check. Yes, I will be there. Oh, good.
Thank you. Good,
yes,
good.
of course.
Good.
But I think we should officially now close the meeting. So please, the meeting organizer, Chitrakshi, do stop the meeting, and so we can have the recording.
Chitrakshi, stop recording.
I think she's on it.
Chitrakshi, recording is still going on. Can you stop it?
I think it's a matter also of everyone just leaving. So if Chitrakshi leaves, I think the one who started the meeting,
No, she
if
could
that,
have. Sagar, can you stop recording? I'm sorry.
it will happen, no problem. We can shorten it in the end. It's not a problem. And very well done. Thanks a lot for the whole organization and the whole facilitation.
Just Christina, what I want to tell you was this: that can you come back into one of those webinars to talk about this?
Yes, let's talk about this on Friday.
Okay.
Yes,
because I think this whole idea, and because he's talking about it as being open, people can join in, etc., etc. So
yes,
I think
yes.
if you were,
I think
he talked about it, but obviously he couldn't go into detail, which you could go.
yes,
And,
I think Shubhagato and me, we will meet to talk about the last session, and I think we can include it there.
Yeah, it would be.
Mm-hmm.
If you agree, and if you allow me to say that, I would not like to wait for that till the last session.
Okay, we talk about the detailed program that you have on Friday, so we can then see where it fits in.
We could be with okay.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I will leave now and wait for the recording and the presentations to be shared with us. We will share them on our webpage. And if you could...
What I would like to kind of find out is this, that there are lots of, earlier discussions before the webinar started must be there on the recording.